Okay, hi guys, and thank you for joining us for the third international webinar in the series that we've got going on. This time around, we're joined by partners from our ABCitiEs international project. Before I hand you over to the session chair, Ares, I'm just going to quickly talk you through the controls, which you can see on your screen. So we're using the Zoom webinars function. You can see that there's three functions at the bottom of your screen. We've got Q&A, we've got the chat function, and we've also got the raise your hand function. All three of these functions will be used today. So you can use the chat just to put any informal messages like hello, etc. You can use the Q&A to type any questions that you've got during the webinar. So if you have any questions during any of the presentations, please write them in the Q&A box, and either myself or Ares or Steve will pick up the questions. And then you've also got the raise your hand function. We like to do a quick little test for the raise your hand. So if I can ask everybody just to raise their hand on the call so you can hear us clearly. Good to see. Plenty of hands going up. So thank you very much for participating in that. And with that, I'll hand over to the chair for the day, Aris Kalandidis. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Tom. Thanks for introducing and explaining how Zoom functions for those who have not used it very often. This is the third international webinar that we're doing to talk about town centres and the different issues that have risen through the pandemic today. This is a bit particular because what we have is, this is part of a project, an Interreg project with several partners, which is the ABCitiEs project. ABCitiEs, area-based collaborative entrepreneurship in cities. This is very typical Interreg type of titles. And area-based collaborative entrepreneurship is about entrepreneurs collaborating, like co-investing, different things, facilities, technologies, how they market their urban district collectively, how they improve shared public spaces, and so on. The project is also about how to foster urban regeneration, because as you know, very often small local firms are very, very strongly connected to the neighborhood and committed to social goals. So it's, we believe that through this cooperation, livability and social ties between local stakeholders are enforced. It's also about reinforcing inclusive growth, cooperation, cohesion, because globalization has also some negative impacts on places, which is how do you address them, how do you deal with them, how do you deal with income inequality or decline in certain urban areas. So these are the goals of the project. And we have 5 European urban regions that are involved in it: Amsterdam, Athens, Manchester, Vilnius, and the conurbation of Varaždin, Čakovec in Croatia. And all of these experiment with ABC, exchange information, and so on. So this is part of it. I'm Aris Kalandidis. I'm a professor of place management and director of the Institute of Place Management at Manchester Metropolitan University. I've got another colleague of mine, Steve Millington, who you all know because he's part of the project. And we have several other partners here today who will talk about the places and the challenges they're currently facing. We will have the opportunity to answer questions and get into a discussion. Not very long, but we shall have it. We'll have a first block of 4 presentations. We'll start with Amsterdam. We'll continue with Greece. So we've got somebody from Thessaloniki and from Athens. And then we have 2 presentations from Manchester, 2 from the City of Manchester and 1 from CLAS, the National Organization for Local Economies in Manchester. We'll take a break. Well, we don't really take a break. We'll just collect your questions, discuss the questions, answer the questions. And then in about an hour, we'll have the other 2. We're going to have the 2 partners from Croatia and Vilnius presenting. What I will ask, I've asked participants already, but I will insist, this is my big favor I want to ask you, please stick to under 10 minutes. Now, for the audience, you are most welcome to ask questions. As Tom already said, mostly use the Q&A function, which is at the bottom. That is the easiest for us to answer. We will be checking chat and other functions too, but please use the Q&A and feel free to write any questions you like while the speakers are on. So we will start with Amsterdam, Agi Augenbro and Henny Loos from the city of Amsterdam, and Ewart Koning was the chairman of the Business Association in Amsterdam. And the floor is yours. I will be muting myself, and please everybody else does too while you speak.
Yes, thank you very much. Hello everybody. Well, we start off with some sunny pictures. Today it's a very grey and rainy and cold day in Amsterdam. My name is Agi Augenbro and I work as a coordinator for business improvement districts. I will take care of the first couple of sheets, and after that Henny will take over, and Ewart, most of you met him in Croatia, will join us for his view on the events in the last couple of months. Next sheet, please. Well, these are the 3 questions to address. Next one, please. Aviation and the visitor economy in Amsterdam have been hit hard by the lockdown and travel restrictions. First signs of recovery can be seen since the easings, but still at a low level compared to last year. Passenger traffic at Schiphol Airport disappeared for 2 months. In April and May, passenger volume was 2 to 3% of the volume in 2019. And from the end of May, we see that the number of destinations and flights at Schiphol has increased, as the number of travelers have. Next one, please. Fewer visitors have a major impact on retail, especially in the city centre. More than half of the total retail turnover in the centre comes from visitors and tourists. 11% comes from people in the region and 36% comes from Amsterdam residents. And during the lockdown in March, April, the number of visitors to the shopping streets in the centre was less than 10% of the number in 2019. Another sign that the visitor economy is starting up again is the increase of number of visitors in the Kalverstraat, which is sort of comparable to Oxford Street, London. Visitor volume has risen to 45% of the level in 2019 in mid-June.
May I ask something here about this figure? Excuse me, Agi.
Yeah.
Is it 45% of last year, or is it 45% more than last year?
No, it's 45% compared to the level in June 2019.
So less than half. Okay, sorry.
Yes, that's right. Yeah. As far as the hotels are concerned, more hotels have reopened in June, and room occupancy increased from below 10% in May to 17% in mid-June. And last few weeks, hotels show better occupancy rates, but hotel owners fear a new drop after the summer holidays, as the travel market for business travels show little recovery. Next sheet, please. Several arrangements have been made at national level for entrepreneurs. We do not discuss them here, and we limit ourselves to actions and regulations in Amsterdam. A couple of municipality fees will not be charged, like the commercial use of public space for cafes and restaurant patios. Advertising fees will not be charged in this year, and no fees for entrepreneurs at local markets this year. Over to Henny, please.
Yes, thank you, Agi. Next sheet, please. Yes, another action of the municipality is a campaign for residents. We started a campaign to invite residents to rediscover the city and to spread residents across the city, just to inform residents on what the city has to offer in terms of arts and culture, catering, shops and parks. The campaign is strictly informative and is not aimed at attracting visitors from outside the city. Next sheet, please. There's also another campaign running at the moment. The BIDs and business associations of the city centre have joined forces and launched their own visitor campaign since end of June. And they have made some videos and photos, and that shows that there are still plenty of places to discover in the city center. And you can also see how entrepreneurs experience this difficult time. With this campaign, they want more visitors to the city center. And the target group are people who are living, working or studying in Amsterdam. Next sheet, please. Another action of the municipality is the terrace extension. Since the 1st of June, there are new policy rules for temporary terrace extension. Entrepreneurs can submit a request for a terrace. An important condition is that the entrepreneur has consulted with local residents and entrepreneurs nearby. And on joint application from different entrepreneurs are given priority to stimulate collaboration. At the moment, we received already 1,100 applications for initiatives, and about 10% are joint applications, mainly by existing BITs. Next sheet, please. The municipality organized also with 6 other partner organizations a pitch for entrepreneurs. The pitch was organized for entrepreneurs for the best ideas for the 1.5 meter economy. 123 entrepreneurs submitted a corona-proof initiative, and the winners didn't get money, but the 3 winners have access to knowledge and the network of the organizing partners, and they have support for the implementation of their plans. Next sheet, please. We come now for a last sheet about the recovery. We see 3 opportunities for the coming periods. First, subsidies. We have in Amsterdam different kinds of subsidies, and we need now a smart use of subsidies. We think subsidy for marketing and street management is very important. Second, knowledge sharing. It's important to share experiences between all the BITs and other associations, to learn from each other and to make them stronger. We started online sessions in March that worked very well. So we will continue these online sessions. We are also going to develop a digital platform for BITs. Another opportunity is a vision. We need to develop a vision on what type of visitor we want to focus on. The question is, do we want other target groups, less mass tourism and more quality tourists? But what does that mean for the city? Fewer visitors or other visitors can have a major impact on retail in the city center, but also for the rest of the city. Well, this brings us to the end of our presentation. Ewart Konings, our next speaker and chairman of a business association in Amsterdam, will now explain his experiences and vision. And thank you very much.
Can you please check your time, because you're almost at 10 minutes for Amsterdam.
Oh, okay.
So I have to keep it very short. Is that correct?
Thank you very much for keeping it very short.
Well, I will only talk 1 minute maximum. Well, obviously, as a street in the city center of Amsterdam, we implemented all the kind of general corona measures. Obviously, we did signage on the street, we did banners over the street, and we limited the access to all the venues, which costed us a big effort on extra security. As mentioned before, we are using public space more as one big terrace in our street, which is working very well. The focus is at the moment more on the outside than on the inside. We are trying to avoid people queuing up in the street, and obviously most bars try to keep in contact because of the limited capacity we have with their public through live streams, etc. And one last point from my side is that because we want to stay connected with our community, we have been organizing, we are organizing 3 small-scale events around Pride, which is always in the first week of August. My conclusion from the field is that it's hard, but our street will probably live through this all, because we have for the most Amsterdam clients, and we are not so depending on tourism. Thank you. Even kijken.
Thanks very much for this short and very useful ending. There was one question from the audience that I need to address because it's about explanation. Is it the 1.5 meter economy, the social distancing economy? Is that the idea?
That's right.
Okay, fine. All right. So that was excellent. I'm keeping one thing which I think was very interesting is how you went into consultation and how giving extra space to entrepreneurs and businesses meant that they had to talk to residents before actually doing it, and other businesses. That's extremely interesting. Thank you very much. We have some great insights from Amsterdam, as always. Let's pass to Greece. Let's pass to Athens, where some things are happening at the moment. And we have Eleftheria Alexandri from the Athens Municipality, Department of Resilience and Sustainability, and Thanasis Kalogeresis from the University of Thessaloniki. Thank you very much.
I think Thanasis will start.
Yeah. Thank you, Aris. Thank you. I will also try to be very, very short. I don't think I will take more than a couple of minutes, so that I let Eleftheria take more time. Actually, let me just start by explaining our decision to briefly outline the national policies in contrast to, I guess, most of the teams. It actually has to do with the different relative role of the central government in Greece. I mean, just to give you a perspective, what the central government does in Greece is much more significant for local areas and town centers than most countries in Europe. So I will just very briefly outline the main measures taken by the Greek government in response to COVID. So could you please move to the next slide? Or better, one slide more. So Aris would be very happy. So this was actually a short outline of the timing of the reaction of the Greek government. I will just stick to the main measures taken at the national level, which are actually the third bullet here. Whereas at the national level, I mean, whereby law permitted to occupy additional public space or granted reduced municipal fees or levies in case expansion was impossible, and to pedestrianize specific roads or make way for sitting, pedestrian and bicycle traffic. This was actually, and up to this point, has been the main national policy regarding town centers. Could you please move to the next slide? So very little has been done except for these two specific measures regarding town centers or ABCiTEs in Greece in general. Currently, there is an unidentified share of businesses that still remain closed due to very limited demand, because the visitor economy is still more or less dead throughout the country. While depending on the importance of tourism, there are forecasts of turnover reductions of up to 70% in many cases, while according to surveys, very large shares of businesses, sometimes even up to 30 or 40%, claim that they are quite unlikely to reopen after the lifting of all measures. So it is our opinion that the localities and municipalities have a particularly important role here. So I'm giving the floor to Eleftheria to continue with the case of Athens. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Thanasis. So when we were building the resilience strategy for Athens, we were thinking about natural disasters like earthquakes, floods, and fires that could be acute shocks, but we hadn't thought about pandemics, that we face this acute shock, and now it is turning into a chronic stress that we have to face. Sorry. And could we move to the next slide, please? So during the beginning of the pandemic with the lockdown, we had an acute economic and social shock for the city. Like most cities around the world, the city was empty, the city was quiet, and also the city was much cleaner. Excuse me. Συγγνώμη, μιλάω σε ένα σεμινάριο, μπορούμε να μιλήσουμε μετά? Ναι, ποιος είσαστε? Ναι, όχι, ποιος είσαστε, ποια είσαστε? Εντάξει, θα σε πάρω σε λίγο. Sorry for that. So we had a city that was 50% had less air pollutants than before because of the cars that didn't move anymore. Could we please move to the next slide? During the pandemic, it was quite important and very promising what we observed in the people of Athens, a lot of solidarity campaigns, people trying to raise food for people who were left without work or were in very bad conditions. So it was an important thing that what was happening in Athenian districts. And also we saw that due to the queues that had to be made in front of the shops, people started having a new use of communal space. It was for queuing, it was also for acting with each other, talking with each other. So we had a rediscovery of neighborhood and of the open spaces that had stayed open, which had a very positive effect in a lot of neighbors. Could we please move to the next slide? What the municipality did, apart from what Thanasis said that the state did, the municipality of Athens continued offering meals to homeless and people in poverty. We managed to get some buildings that belong to the state that we had been trying to get for 11 years and they were vacant in the city center. We managed to get them in order to host there the homeless of the city. And also we launched the project Offer Help at Home, which was run quite successfully. Could we please move? Regarding the enterprises, municipal tax exemption and reduction was offered to the enterprises that had to shut down during the lockdown. And also we were in the transit of digitalizing and simplifying many of the processes of the interaction of SMEs with the municipality. So the digitalization process went into a much fast-forward process, which was great for all of us. Could we please move? And so after the lockdown, the mayor came up with a grand plan of the big walk, as it was called, to pedestrianize and make cycling paths in many parts of the historic city center in order to attract more visitors. And also what Thanasis said, offer more communal space for leisure activities, to cafes and restaurants, so that people stay outdoors and not indoors. Could we please move? And another thing that the mayor broadcasted a week ago is that we are planning to do an ABC in the historic center, create an open mall, as he called it, in the historic center, Agora Athens, Plaka Monastiraki, where what we have been discussing in ABCitiEs will be put forward, like branding of this place, organize all the enterprises under a common strategy, make smartphone applications for it, find funding, and have a collaboration between the municipality, the enterprises, the Chamber of Tradesmen, and the Ministry of Development and Investment. Could we please move to the next one? So yeah,
What do you check
we're
time
moving.
to, Eleftheria? Just your
Time is over.
over, almost.
Okay, so we're moving from an acute shock to a chronic stress. We see that COVID cases have increased with tourism. Could we please move to the next one? So we have to learn with it, make sure that food arrives safely in the city, and expand the collaboration and solidarity that we noticed among Athenian citizens to Athenian SMEs, and move beyond the economy of leisure towards circular economy. Thank you.
Oh, thanks very much. That was exactly 10 minutes. Actually, it was 9 something. Thanks. I had just one question that popped up. You keep saying the mayor presented and the mayor decided. Does he do that alone?
The mayor?
The question is, you keep saying the mayor introduced, the mayor announced, and so on.
Yeah.
Does he do that on his own?
No, but it is the official, when it is the official announcement, we can say it like that.
Okay, fine. All right. So after Athens, let's move on to Manchester. And I think Martin Saker is there and Karen Findlay too. Martin Saker, Strategic Lead Neighborhoods. Karen Findlay, the Principal Policy Officer working on planning policy from Manchester City Council. So Manchester, you're on.
Okay, we've got a case study which is around a specific village, Withington Village. I think we've presented on this village before, but just to say that in 2014 the community came together to save a bath, a leisure centre in Bath that was due to closure, and set up a social enterprise around the baths, and that created a whole load of interest in social enterprise and getting together and working together as a community. And their attention is now focused onto the district centre. So following that and work we did with IPM, the centre local people established a We Are Withington group, and to take an interest in Withington Village, and they've organised a whole series of events to promote footfall and activity in the village, and it's mainly people with business in the village and social enterprise in the village who want to get footfall increased. So within that context, our lockdown started probably a bit later than everyone else's, but started on the 23rd of March. Quickly, everything closed down, except for vital stores selling food. And Manchester City Council established a helpline for residents to access food, to access fuel, to address isolation, and basically the country locked itself down. And yeah, the council set up a whole load of emergency support and initiatives for the community. I think the We Are Withington group, their main way of communicating was through social media, and they were quickly to get out the key messages and support what was going on nationally and within Manchester. So some examples here of what was going on in the village was that the stores that were open collected for food banks, so food could be distributed to those people that were isolated and couldn't access food. The government announced small business grants available for the for small businesses to address loss of income, and the We Are Withington group made sure that all the information was given through social media to businesses in the village about how to access grants. The council itself, this is hopefully future designs will be a bit more sympathetic, but came in to make sure that footpaths were widened and to ensure that we could ensure social distancing in the village. And this is pictures of our main thoroughfare to increase the width of the pavements. I think traders looked at different ways of continuing trading for as long as possible, and go online and do things like do drop-offs to people ordering goods. So on the left, we got a Wilderness Records store and cafe. So I know they did a record loan scheme, and they could drop off records to local people. Mockingbirds at the top, they did deliveries on their bikes. Darren got out on a bike, and people were able to order stuff online. And then the brewery down below, again, where they had to close their facility and offer an online drop-off. I think what was really important was that local people rallied around the importance of the village to their life and posted positive messages on. The Withington Paths group produced virtual classes so people could go online and receive their exercise classes rather than going to the centre. And people were posting positive images over the years that they have, the historic images of the centre. So people gave their relevance and how they missed the centre and gave a positive feel about when it was due to reopen. Just to say, like all the other things we're hearing, we saw a significant drop in footfall for the centre. This shows the one at the top shows the centre operating from previous years, and what we would suggest that we got a reduction in footfall from between 40 and 60%. But if you compare that with the bottom slide, which shows how Withington's at the top and the regional and national figures are below, which shows that other centres across the trend is a loss in about 80% footfall. And I think this was encouraging that people, where they were going out, were actually going out to their local centre. And it would suggest that in recovery, that this is an opportunity to capture people's interest in the locality and ensure people shop locally. It wasn't all negative. There were some stores have continued to invest and make sure they're ready for opening. And this is a picture of Berin, who went out on a bike. She's done a whole new shop front improvements, so she's ready for opening. And then we've got a new taco bar. There was a bar that's been transformed into a new taco bar, and they're going to open, I think, this week. So that the entrepreneurs and businesses had confidence enough to actually invest in the village. So we've only just started opening. Non-essential shops able to open from Monday the 15th of June. And this is a few examples of people opening up and getting ready for opening up, where they're able to sort of keep social distancing and start using spaces outside. And as people have said, you know, the council would encourage the use of open spaces and public spaces in the village. So the one behind is the Wilderness Records, who were doing their record deliveries, now ready to take people back into the cafe and store. And on the right, you can see a group who were where people go and fill up their items through bringing containers and getting things like cereal, wheat and other products just by bringing their containers on, and they're accommodating and looking at new ways of working, so they're able to open up safely and ensure social distancing. So overall, I think as we just start reopening the centre, I like to say there's still a lot of confidence in the centre. The jury's out on the impact that it's had on businesses, but you know, the businesses that we know about are looking to open again. We have a partnership, and the partnership is still intact and ready to oversee and continue the momentum in the village. We know we're talking to investors, as they're still progressing their plans, and we making sure that over the next couple of months that we show positive activity in the centre through a Withington Walls, a mural project, and creating a new pocket park that we were both proposals we had before the lockdown, but we ensure that these happen over the next couple of months so that people have positive image of change and investment going into the village. And we're looking at the government continuing to release money to enable us to do further pedestrianisations in the area and to remove the traffic from the area so there's more space for social distancing and people. But these were long-term plans for us, so hopefully it gives us an opportunity to pilot some of the initiatives that we've been long-standing for the village and gives us a way into future investment. I think that's it, really. That's a quick sort of.
All right, is Karen joining in with something? Or not?
No, I think I was just going to give it the main overview.
All right, fine, very well. So what?
If there's any questions, but we
yeah,
just.
Okay, we'll see. We'll see. We haven't got any questions for you at the moment, but there are some for all of you. So we'll come back to that. Just one piece of information on our blog, on the blog of the IPM, the Institute of Place Management. The very last entry is about the case we just talked about, Withington. So if you just go to blog.placemanagement.org, you will find an article explaining exactly that. Okay, so this is it. And let's move now to class, still in Manchester. Helen, I suppose that you'll be the one doing this presentation, right?
I certainly will. Thank you very much,
thank
Iris. So, yeah, as Iris said, thank you very much for inviting me to speak to you. I am just going to talk through some work that CLES, that's the Centre for Local Economic Strategies, but everybody calls us CLES, is doing, looking at area-based collaboration in Manchester's district centres. So we're in the process of producing a report on behalf of the IPM, which I'll talk through in a minute. If I can just go to the next slide, please, just very quickly, just to talk you through what CLES is. We're the National Organisation for Local Economies in the UK. So we work by thinking and doing. We're a think, do tank, which means that in practice, we work with regional and national governments on economic development projects, but we also produce policy, and relevant to our discussion today, we recently produced a publication around how local economies can recover and reform in light of the COVID-19 crisis. So I'd encourage you all to go and have a look at that if you can. On to this project, if we could just move on to the next slide. So the IPM briefed CLES that to produce a report, let's have a look, very specifically around district centres and area-based collaboration. So while we've heard quite a lot from the other areas about city centre collaborative networks, we wanted to look very specifically at neighbourhood retail centres. So Martin, who just spoke to me, who just spoke earlier, is in Withington, which is one of those centres that we're looking at. Martin referred to it as a village, and I don't think many people outside of Manchester would see Withington if they visited there as a village. It's a kind of a suburban area, and we're looking very much at the retail centres. But within Withington, the Withington Village Regeneration Partnership would be a really good example of the kind of area-based collaboration that we're looking at as part of this study. So IPM asked us to look at the scope of networks in 10 different places in Manchester, and to kind of understand what their strengths were, what their capacities were, and what kind of impact they were having in terms of regeneration in those places, and to produce a report which we should be having towards the end of this summer, which summarises the research, selecting some examples of practice and writing up 2 case studies of that work. If we can move on to the next slide. So the 10 district centres, which I will go through just for those of you who are based in Manchester or nearby, you may know some of these places, are Northenden, Gorton, Harperhay, Chorlton, Withington, Rusholme, Fallowfield, Cheetham Hill, Victoria Road and Levenshulme, and I reserve the fact that I should get at least some of our project fee for doing this, just for knowing all 10 of those places off by heart now. So the original approach to doing this research was that we were going to be interviewing neighbourhood managers, so that's employees of the municipality, of which Martin is one. However, the research period started at around about the 30th of March, at which time, quite rightly, a lot of those neighbourhood managers had been redeployed to more frontline roles within Manchester City Councils. So we decided to slightly pivot our approach and instead speak to network leaders. So like I said, people like the people who are leading the Withington Village Regeneration Partnership. We kind of had to do that through a bit of a snowball effect. So we actually ended up doing quite a lot of research on things like Facebook and looking for groups, asking people to recommend good people for us to interview. And actually what that meant is we really managed to speak to some really, really interesting candidates. So we've been talking to what you would call traditional and also quite non-traditional traders associations, but we've also been speaking to people who are running markets or had been running markets, people who had been running shopping centres. So I think we're getting some really interesting insights as part of that. The approach is that we hope at some point we'll be able to go back and talk to the neighbourhood managers and perhaps kind of flesh out some of the stories we've got. There is a framework that's beginning to emerge. We've now conducted about 5 of the interviews, so we're kind of quite early stage in this research. So 5 of the places we've completed, and there's a kind of framework that's starting to emerge that looks at how these entrepreneurship networks in these places formed and the effect that that has on their activity, and a number of other things. Specifically looking at how they operate within the bounds of bonding, bridging and linking social capital. So bonding social capital very much, how do they operate with people who share similar characteristics to them? Do they operate well within other business owners? Bridging social capital is more about understanding the extent to which they are able to connect with other entrepreneurs or other organisations in their place that may be different and have a different set of cultural values or cultural norms from themselves. And linking social capital is about how they are able to link into the municipality. So largely that's Manchester City Council, but also other anchor institutions that have a stake in their place. So Withington's, again, a really good example in that they've got a large and well-renowned cancer hospital that's close by to the district centre, so exploring those relationships. And also, although it wasn't within the original scope of the project, we have been looking at how those places have been developing COVID-19 support activity. If we can move on to the next slide, I'm sort of conscious of time, but I'm going to talk very, very quickly through some very, very early findings. And this is all sort of, you know, it's being teased out as we go along, but there's some interesting things that are coming out. One of the things that we think is really interesting is that we're finding that the reason that somewhere a partnership formed very often drives its ethos, so the thinking behind the activities that it wants to do, and therefore the activities themselves. But actually the activities themselves are a huge range of different things that different types of organisations are taking on, and even some organisations that have a very similar form and remit are doing very different things, and that sort of moves from sort of street art projects all the way to advocating for active travel, and then some perhaps more traditional traders associations and networks that are advocating for perhaps less active travel, which might be something that people recognise. On the whole, we're finding that bonding networks are very, very strong. People are very good at collaborating with people who own similar businesses to them. They're less strong, although this is very early kind of summary on the bridging social networks. So there's not super amount of kind of reaching out to other different businesses, other different communities. And in linking, we're finding that the relationships are varying massively. So a lot of the entrepreneurship networks that we're talking to see themselves as a conduit, and that operates either as a one-way street or a two-way street. So they can be pushing information from the municipality through to the entrepreneurs in their network to support them. The network can be pushing information and requests through to the municipality the other way. What we're finding in the kind of early stage finding is that the networks which seem to be functioning the best are quite unsurprisingly operating as a two-way street. So they're kind of having that kind of information going in, support going out, support going in, information going out. So
how long do you check your time? Thank you.
Yeah, I'm just finishing up. And so the final point is just the COVID-19 support activity. So the period of time that we've been doing these interviews, everything was in full lockdown in the UK, so activity was quite low. But what we're finding now is that activity is starting to pick up. Some of that activity is quite what you would expect. So it's kind of sharing information on government assistance, now turning into kind of more of a shop local campaign type approach. But then also there have been some seeds of innovation. And as Martin said, a lot of businesses are repivoting their offer, and actually the networks have been quite supportive in helping the entrepreneurs in their areas to do that. So I think I'm done. So if we move on to the next slide, I'm happy to take any questions afterwards.
Thank you, Helen. And by the way, Helen, you can also use the chat function. So a lot of people have added links and some information in there. So you can add anything, any publications that class has that people may want to join. I say something. So Steve has inserted a link on the blog article we talked about. We have Athens has inserted a link on the Athens is Back campaign, which is also about how to attract people. There is also information, the High Streets Task Force, and temporary public round changes, etc. And let me just, since we have about 15 minutes for some questions and answers, let me take some questions both from the chat and from the Q&A function. I'll start with the ones that are to particular speakers, and then there's one for everybody. There are two questions about Amsterdam, which is, how was the competition promoted? And is it just for the city stakeholders, or did it go wider? And how do you evaluate this relative success? So anybody who from Amsterdam who would like to answer it, you're welcome. To tell us more about that competition.
Just unmute yourselves, guys.
We'll be doing that?
It was a competition for the Amsterdam region, the metropolitan region Amsterdam.
How do you explain the relative success? You had 122, if I remember well, participants. Even though you gave no money, right? It was just networking and know-how.
That's right, that's right. Well, I would have to guess. I think they just did it through their networks. They gave floor to the pitch, I suppose.
Yeah, and the jury was also important, because in the jury there was a major, alderman, some directors, very rather important people, I should say. But I think that's also they got a very big podium, because there were interesting organizations who joined the challenge.
All right, thank you. The second question was for Athens, and it was, how did Athens control and police these? They need this type of extended use of public space.
Yeah. Okay. I guess you mean during the lockdown, isn't it?
Yes, probably.
Yeah, probably. Well, the thing is, we had a lot of official parks that was closed down, and people were able to walk around their neighborhoods. So they couldn't go away from their neighborhoods, so they started rediscovering their neighborhoods. And a positive thing that we inspected in a couple of hills that are within the city is that they were abandoned to illegal actions there that before the lockdown, that during the lockdown they were not happening, and it was a lot of people going there for a walk. So the people have reclaimed these hills, and now these hills function for the people and not for illegal actions, which is great.
I see, that's interesting. Thank you very much, Eleftheria. And I have a question for everybody coming from Jan Brown. Is, have you increased the use of digital communications during the COVID lockdown and during the recovery period? Can you please mute your microphones? We're having a terrible echo. Thank you. Have you increased the use of digital communications during the COVID lockdown and during the recovery period? And if so, has this allowed a wide range of entrepreneurs to be involved in the discussions, or has it restricted the breadth of discussions? So did you have more communication, and what results did you see? Did you see more people participating or fewer people participating? Anybody who would like to comment on that, you're welcome. It's for everybody. Anybody?
I think
Martin.
in Manchester, what we've seen is that it's the local community that have increased their communication through social media, and these are groups that have very much popped up around Facebook groups who have become self-support groups, as well as the We Are Withington group. So what we're seeing is the community actually taking ownership and doing a lot of the communication themselves.
All right. What about the other cities? Any experience? Yes, Eleftheria? Need to unmute. You're on mute, Eleftheria.
Sorry. Yeah, these groups that we discussed that they were very active in solidarity campaigns. They used the media a lot, and chat rooms like this one. Now they are back to meeting each other. Regarding the municipality, a lot of the processes of interaction became digital, and they have remained digital. However, these processes between the municipality and the citizens didn't have anything to do with the dialogue. But we saw that people went digital, but what we noticed with young people is that after the lockdown, they didn't want to remain digital. They started needing to see each other, while youngsters were more digital before the lockdown.
I was in Athens until yesterday. I don't think I've seen Athens parks so full as I see them today.
Yeah,
that's it's a huge surprise. Any other from the other cities? No? Fine. So if not, we can move to the second part of the presentations and go to the two cities from Croatia, from Zagreb, and then also to Varaždin-Čakovec, and also to Vilnius. So let's start with Varaždin-Čakovec, and we'll have Vjeran Strahonia and Goranka Grijic. Sorry for that again. And the floor is yours. Please stick to the 10 minutes, and everybody else feel free to use the Q&A function to ask any questions that you may have.
Thank you very much. I hope you hear me. Hello to everybody. Nice to see you again. I talk a little bit about triple R during the COVID crisis in our cities. Please, next. My basic impression is that after this crisis, nothing will be the same, or we hope that nothing will be the same. We examine social and other relationships, values, our relationships with people, with nature, and the earth during the crisis. We had enough time to do it. But maybe I'm not right, but after that we'll went back to the old in some aspects of our relationships, and of course in the management of the cities. However, this situation created a new research challenge, and part of our impressions or our statements will be presented during our presentation. Based on very rough analysis of public sources, mainly public sources, social networks, local portals, news portals, and other sources, I suppose that the COVID pandemic crisis, with its many suffering and certain global economic crisis, in comprehensive proportion in our history, will do a lot for digital transformation, and more as some projects, strategies, state of or local initiatives and funds over the past decades. We are witnessing that all industries, public services, and other parts of society are digitally transformed. Looking for maybe for some new business models, for some new behavioral patterns, for, as you mentioned before, for new communication channels. I think it's a very revolutionary process for many traditional industries. We can say that it had been a quantum leap in digital transformation. For example, a time frame from idea to implementation is shortened by order of size from typically from 1 to year, from 1 to 3 year projects to a month. Then the new investments in the infrastructure during this short period were not possible because disruption occurred in very short time, and so that systems and society as a whole rely on existing infrastructure. Here is scalability of new technologies and new medias, new services, very important, because it's essential to increase the amount of service operations and other capabilities without such big investments. Of course, there is a need for new business models. Next, please. There are some bullets about digital transformation of area-based collective entrepreneurship. That's, of course, a comprehensive transformation of business by using all advantages and opportunities of contemporary technologies. The emphasis is on the new business models within a short period of time. Next, please. When talking about triple R, responding, recovering, and reinventing during the COVID-19, I think that we are witnessing of two trends. One is isolation prevention of physical contacts and travel, and another one are traffic and supply disruptions. As a response to these disruptions, there is a transition to digital products and services adapted to the new reality, and the substitution of products and services. Next, please. I talk a little bit about our local experiences on our cases. For example, we had ABCitiEs case, Urban Research Factory. This collective turned over the night in March to 3D printing campaign of visors for the protection of medical staff, and they did close to 1,000 such visors. And a lot of small and the micro enterprises turned to new products and services. For example, one software developing company moved to the development of software for the thermovision. And we have a lot of such examples. But I'll focus on our cases. Next, please. We have also two cases, City Market in Čakovec and local products and services in Varaždin. And as part of one other research, we have analyzed from March 22 to April 3rd, different sources of information, mainly social networks, and we noticed exponential growth of websites, online stores, platforms, initiatives, and collectives. Next, please. for example, here are two examples of digital transformation of local food markets in the city of Varaždin and city of Dubrovnik. Over the night, they turned to web shop to be digital. Next, please. Then we have in the field of food production area-based collectives. Here are two examples. One is collective Gredica. They have a title, Eat Locally, support local food producers. We have another one example here, be friend with the farmer in the neighborhood, buy the food locally. That means there is a lot of new local area-based collectives. Next, please. We have also short supply chains. On the right side of the picture, we have examples of the Spar and the supermarket and Consum, our national supply supermarkets, biggest one. They turned to the local producers. And of course, there is a lot of institutional support and measures. We have two examples. There is support of EU Commission representatives in Croatia and a call to local food producers of the city of Čakovec. Goranka will tell something about institutional support and measures.
Can you also check your time,
Next.
please?
Yeah, next. Goranka. Goranka.
Goranka, can you turn on your...
Yeah, I did. Thank you. I always get so ahead of myself before I turn on the mic. So, hello everyone, my name is Goranka Grbić. I work in city of Varaždin as Senior Counselor for EU projects. And I will tell you something about the measures that were conducted during pandemic in Croatia. Please, next slide. So city of Varaždin is a local government, and during COVID crisis in March, April and May, there were lots of restrictions, and the city of Varaždin was acting as local civil protection headquarters. So all the events, cultural programs, performances, everything was banned until further notice. Businesses that would come into close contact with customers were closed. Also, businesses serving food and beverage. City market was closed, and although there was not a strict quarantine, we had very restricted movements between the cities, and you couldn't go to your work or meet a client or make a business meeting without a special permit. So next slide, please. Okay, so during measures of COVID-19, there were some measures that City of Varaždin take together with the City Council. So parking charges from mid-March till mid-May were suspended. Since the city market was closed, there was organized a drive-in city market, so our entrepreneurs could sell their goods. And on the City Council 24th session, there were numbers of measures and deferral of payments for the citizens and also for the entrepreneurs. So some of them are utility fee, municipal contribution, rents, taxes, and similar. So next slide, please. Regarding the entrepreneurs, we had City of Varaždin made a fund. It was called the Corona Fund. And since the city of Varaždin is very small, it has only 47,000 inhabitants and something less than 2,400 entrepreneurs. So our measures are small in comparison to Athens or Manchester or Amsterdam. So this fund was working on a platform. There was a public call, and companies could apply for financial aid. And during April, May, and June, there were utilities paid for the entrepreneurs that applied, or rent, depending what they were asking the funds for. So during this crisis, there was 322 entrepreneurs that received financial aid from the city of Varaždin. Next, please.
Veronica, I'm sorry, I'll have to remind you of the time.
Yeah,
okay,
yeah.
Thank you. You're 2 minutes over. Thanks.
Yeah, okay. So I think that the most important thing I said about the measures from the city. Vjeran, would you like to add something up for the end?
Just one sentence more. The major support measures are on the national level. So during the crisis, every employee had a guaranteed salary. I think it's about 600 euro. It's a lot for Croatia. That's the major measure on the state level, but there are also some other support funds. And a last sentence, I think that we should make some very positive aspects of this crisis. We should make it sustainable. I think it should be the message. It's of course the crisis, but I think there are also some very positive results, and our idea was to highlight it. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I would like to ask you again afterwards, Vjeran. What do you mean? What are the things that have to become sustainable? But I'll leave it afterwards for the questions.
Yeah, of course. Okay?
Thank you. For me, that's the big question that remained from that. Thank you very much. We'll end with Vilnius. So Laurinas Braškus from Vilnius Sunrise Valley Technology Park will be the last speaker, and thank you very much.
Okay. Hello, everyone. I hope you're still enjoying this webinar, and the last presentation won't be so boring. So I'm talking from I'm going to present the cases for the people and SMEs during the COVID-19 period. I'm going to speak about to present the cases in chronological way, and this time the Vilnius city municipality took over the leadership during this COVID-19 period, or as we call crisis. And the first what they did, I think that's maybe it's on the second day they launched the 3W Karantinas.lt, so it's quarantine.lt in translation. So they published the ways how to keep yourself at home with kids, for adults, for seniors, and for teenagers. What kind of stuff and activities they can do at home, like they opened the free cinema online, and they recorded as an example, they recorded the bloom of sakuras, in case that people won't go to check them, how they're blooming outside Vilnius during the spring. So spring was very nice, and people so how to keep the people inside the homes during that period. So that's what they did during the quarantine, so to inform people how to behave themselves at home, because that's a large issue. And since the beginning, nobody still so far cared about SMEs, how they would be lived during the next time, because everybody was scared how to make sure that nobody could be infected and sick in larger number of people. So how to prevent them. So if you could, next slide, please. So how to prevent it? That's very quickly. And next week, on the second week, there was strongtogether.lt. So Stiprus called Kartu.lt website has launched with telephones to register all the people willing to help the elderly people to buy the grocery, to buy for them the groceries at the grocery shops, and the food. So it means that everybody helped buy for Vilnius cases, the grocery shops and retail shops for food was open. So in some limited times in schedule and that's they regulate amount in the shops. But the thing is that elderly people was here the weakest link. So people register as willing to help. They bought the food, bring to the elderly people flats and home that food, live there and got the money back. So this is so there was 2,000 more than 2,300 people registered willing to help over the Lithuania, and that's the help giving 6,107. See, that's from the statistics. So that's how the people try to help each other, not to keep themselves inside. So next slide, please. And what happens? The takeaway business just boosted during that time, just dramatically. So as for instance, there were local player like Stay.lt, World Food and Bold Food. They just dramatically increased the delivery of food delivered at home, and the same with the groceries. So they just not only the restaurant food were delivering, but groceries too. So these locker stores has been occupied 100%. So their food was brought to lockers, and the people were able to take them from the lockers. So in this case, largest retailer Barbora in all the Vilnius, they were calculating from 200 employees, just increased to 550 employees just for Vilnius. So it's like almost tripled employees just for delivering of food this time. And what happened in the rest of the retailers, they just quickly opened their online shops for that and opened the outside takeaway gate. So everybody just saying which my order, they deliver it back and just pick up and you go home. So it's not to enter the shops at all. Next slide, please. Enterprise Lithuania has calculated how many online shops has been opening during that time. So that's we calculate in 2 months. So they calculated that 1,200 online shops just opening during 2 months. So these SMEs being digitalized by COVID-19 just during 2 months. So and there is a list as well published on Enterprise Lithuania, which show new online shops has been opening so far. And they provided a manual for SMEs how to open online shops and do the easy with WordPress tool to integrate the ordering system on their current.
Laurinas, one short question. Are these just retail businesses or all type of SMEs?
All type of SMEs. So I'm sorry they do not have the translation in English here, but just to translate what is written here is quality shoes, hand-made accessories.
Okay, but this is retail. Is it just retail or is it different types of SMEs?
No, it's just single or 2 people working in this business.
So it's shops.
Shops, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Fine.
Yeah. So every shop try to open their.
But it's shop. It's not other types of SMEs. That's what I'm trying to understand. It's about shops. No. It's commerce. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Very small SMEs. The ones who used to have physical shop inside the Vilnius, those opened the online shops to serve the people online and then to bring by delivery companies to home. Next slide, please. Okay, so what Vilnius City Municipality did something like a month after. So everybody noticed that COVID-19 won't finish so quick, and the quarantine time will be extended more than a month. And this is painful for those catering businesses. So they just closed the old town for the traffic, the car traffic, and they said that all open spaces are for SMEs to serve their clients outside in 3 meters distances. So it means you can serve the people of 2 on a table if the tables are in social distance. So that's a magazine catch up that's news, like Lithuanian capital to be turned into vast open air cafe. So this is the way how the Vilnius municipality helped these catering services, or SMEs, so to call, to bring back people, or to help them to bring that revenue.
Laudinas, check your time, please.
Yep.
Thank you.
Next slide, please. Later, so nobody could, still there's only one flight, several flights to Helsinki, London and Frankfurt is available. So that means nobody could do tourism so far. Maybe exception is Latvia and Estonia is open borders now. But so what city municipality did, so they opened beaches. And this day they renovated all the beaches around the Vilnius, and this time in the city center with bookshelves, with cinema, and so on. So open beaches for the people in the city. Next slide, please. They open it, the people, as well, there are people wishing to do sporting, and that's as well keep people away. So they open it and marketed the track of 100 kilometers for people to go around the Vilnius, not inside the Vilnius. So just from the streets, brick street running to trail running. So this is the map and for the people who wish to do sport during quarantine. Next slide, please. And the last help for SMEs with so they open it online, street art without roof. It's called street art without roof. So they together with advertisement JC Decor, they published all available arts to buy online on the street of the city, and you can check them on the page. So that's the help for artists to make their business, because still people are not allowed to have large gatherings and get into galleries. So these galleries their products has been printed, published on the JC Decor venues, and people can check these galleries and buy artist stuff so far.
So coming to an end? Are you coming to an end, Laudinas? Okay.
Yeah, that's the end. I'm not touching the national support for the rest of SMEs. That's I mean still going, and nobody see. I mean, I do not. There are national help from the government up to 500, 1,000 till 1,500 euros, but nobody knows how this helps in reality. SMEs.
Okay. Thank you very much, Laudinas.
Yeah. Thank you.
So this completes the speakers, and there are several questions that I'm trying to collect also from the chat and the Q&A. The chat is not the best place to ask your questions because there are other things that come in between, but I'll try to see what there is there. So there is basically one question that keeps popping up from everybody else, and it's also my question. And well, the whole ABCitiEs project and the whole idea of place management in general is about partnerships. It's about working together. It's about working together between entrepreneurs, and it's also working together with citizens, right? I would be very interested to know, looking at the questions we have here, in many areas there already were partnerships in place. those partnerships that were already there, did they add any value to what they were doing? So having a partnership already in that place, did that help you go through with your measures, or didn't it make any difference whether you had a partnership or not? That would be the first question, and it's for everybody practically. The second question that I have is, how were citizens in general involved in all these measures that were taking place? In a time of lockdown, it's very difficult to involve people. On the other hand, you don't take decisions without consulting people. How did you solve that dilemma? So these are the two questions. The value of existing partnerships, and the second thing was citizen consultation and participation. Whoever would like to start, I'll be very happy to hear you.
Well, on the first question, Aris.
Yes.
I think it was very helpful. As most know, in Amsterdam we have quite a lot of bids, and we were talking before about these terrace extensions that we were making possible for, you know, to make more terraces on the outside. You see that when entrepreneurs are working together in a bid, that was certainly more helpful for finding. They were easy. Well, they could find each other much more easier than streets who are not working together in a bid already.
Right. You also said a lot in your case about how, you know, you consulted with residents, that even entrepreneurs that wanted to extend their terraces had to consult. Do you have any results from this consultation process? So how did it go in general? Do we know?
Well, it's a shame that Ewart has left us, because he could have told us from his own experience. I'm not sure if Henny knows more about this.
Henny just turned on her microphone, so maybe she has to say something.
Yeah, I must say we were a little bit disappointed, because it was only 10% of the initiatives who were from a collective, and we hoped it would be more. But so that's yeah. But I think it's still positive, because there were big collectives. I mean, there were the initiatives that was very good, because there were big areas who joined and made an application. So that was quite positive. And also the condition to talk with your neighbors, it helped. And we were also very strict in. They had to do it. They had to show us how they did it. And so we are glad we did that, because I think it helped them. It's also good, because they have to show that they talked with each other. Okay. And so we had to stimulate, it stimulated, I think, yes.
Thank you, Henny. Anything from Manchester? So very interesting to know how you involved citizens in a lot of the things that took place in that time. Manchester?
Well, I think for the most part that the citizens themselves led a lot of the debate specifically for Withington, because we had the networks in place. So the We Are Withington group was already set up to enable them to sort of enter into that dialogue of how they could support each other and get the networks out. I suppose the council gave an overview in terms of the context, accessing grants, talking about social distancing, but the initiatives actually came from the community.
Right. What about Athens?
As I said in the presentation, we saw that the solidarity of movements that we have in Athens were very, very active during the lockdown. And from what we can monitor, some of them are still very active about collecting food and giving blood. And it has brought, the lockdown has brought them together. Like we can trace some of these groups uniting in order to do communal actions to face poverty. and such things. So yeah, we do not see it affecting directly entrepreneurships, but we see a strong effect on the society, which is very important, I think.
Right, yes, very, very important. Do you think some of that could last in the long term?
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
With the momentum that it has taken, it could last for a long time.
And this would be a question again to everybody, and even the others who have not spoken yet, which is the idea of what of these changes that we now see, whether they're physical, in the physical space, whether it's in partnerships and relationships and so on, would you like to see in your places in the long term? So what do you think we should sustain? Vieran started saying something about that, so my question goes to him first. So what of these things do you think you would like to see and keep in your cities?
Yeah, I think this transition to digital, I think it will be, it will remain on the long-term basis, because everybody turned to digital, even the old people. Of course, our schools turned to virtual, to digital over the night. Yeah, and of course business. Then maybe the answer on your first question, we are witnessing new networks and new collectives. I think it's very, very, very interesting.
Just what we just heard from Athens too, right?
Yeah. Then I think a good thing is short supply chains. We are buying food products locally more. We are talking about autonomy in key food products, and we are producing again medical protective equipment. Because now we buy it from China, and we are talking a lot. We are talking about a lot of on the need of local production of medical protective equipment. Of course.
Do you see some kind of a discussion of relocalization?
Yeah, relocalization. Of course, we are trying to keep open borders. We have again tourists from abroad in Croatia, because it's relatively safe. But I think this kind of autonomy in food products, in energy, in some other products, is very important to a certain extent.
Okay, thank you very much, Vieran, for that insight. Any last things you would like to say, because we'll have to close it? Somebody would like to add something to the final questions? No? No. All right. So we touched a lot of subjects, and I think there are several questions that would need more time to be answered. You will find the recording and some kind of a short news piece on the IPM website. So we make these things public. We had about 70 people in the audience. They're down to 52 now, which is quite interesting. People are interested to see what is happening around. We'll continue, so we'll have more of these international webinars in the future, because now, as Vieran just said, now that we've discovered that these meetings can be done digitally, we'll stick to some digital solutions in the future. However, it would be also interesting to see how the turn to digital that we saw both in Lithuania and in Croatia, whether this was going to have a negative impact in our cities. And that is the big question, right? But that's the subject maybe of some other seminar, or not this one. So I would like to thank everybody who participated. I would like to thank all the panelists, but also I would like to thank the audience for being with us. Check our website, the IPM website, check the blog, and you may find things that are interesting, a lot of resources about how places recover, and hope to see you soon again in some other international webinar, or maybe live, even better. Thank you, everybody. Thanks for your time. Appreciate it very much.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you, Aris.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.